Okay, we're nearly onto one of my favourite parts of making a whole model, which is the testing of fit and the actual gluing and posing of the model itself. So I've kind of gone ahead a little bit, as I sometimes do in these videos. I've actually cut all the extra bits that weren't able to be clipped off. I've cut them off for all of these parts here. The rods and the gates that were attached to these piston things I've cut off, and then I've tried to smooth it with the knife. I've worked on some slippage areas. I think it differs from model to model, but some parts the slippage isn't really an issue at all. Like this part, there's a big slippage there. Doesn't matter, because that is going to go onto it like so. So you're never ever going to see that. In other areas, the slippage is, pretty serious. I think maybe I've got, possibly sort of on there, maybe where you're going to see these pistons. That's an important thing to look at. And sometimes there's been slippage along the edge of these pieces too, like there, look, maybe. But it's not a huge issue because I have now cut the little extra bits off. Here's one I didn't make earlier. So this is what I mean, where you clip it from the sprue or from the rods and the gates, you're going to have this bit. So what I've done is, as I said at the start, I've shaved that off, and then any kind of slippage, like there's a bit of slippage there, I've tried with the knife very gently to just sort of scrape that off rather than cut it out, because then you're gonna see it even more. So this next stage in the process, which I'm going to do for all of these today, smoothing them out and filing them. It's all right cutting these bits off, but then you're going to have it's not going to be a uniform straight edge. It's going to be kind of wibbly wobbly there. So they do need a good filing, and specifically on any slippage areas as well. As I said in the other video, what I use for that will be these files. I don't tend to use the Games Workshop plastic files for this, just because these work really well and they don't scratch up the resin, which is great. I've always used them for this kind of thing, so that's why I use these rather than the plastic one. A tip is you can have a little bowl of water and you can dip these in every now and again, and then file them, which is what I'm going to be doing today, and that reduces the dust. And this is the stage in all of these parts, at least, not the other parts that I've done, but this is the stage where it's the most, I say, dangerous. You've really got to be careful. You'll see some dust, but it's always the dust that you can't see that is going to be the most harmful. And even if you're super careful and you do this stage outside and you use water and you use a mask, it still may get in your lungs and it still may affect you. You might feel a bit crap the next day or next couple of days. It really can affect you like that. It's one of those things. So if you're going to be filing these kind of pieces down, this is about maximum for what I'm going to be doing today. I'm not even going to attempt to file any of those other parts over there. I most likely will be cutting them, but I won't be filing anything else. I'm going to keep it to a minimum, these parts. And that means that I could probably finish the feet at least today, and maybe the legs. But I'm always a bit apprehensive about completing the legs, because completing the legs involves the upper leg joint, and typically I like to do that when the hip is ready, and then I can get the hips and the legs all done at once. But there we go, it's just something that I sort of thought about. If you are going to do it inside and you don't have an extractor, you don't have a extractor that's used for your airbrush or anything like that, you don't have a dedicated hobby room or hobby area where it can just extract all those all the dust and things, and you really have to do it inside, try and pick one of the largest rooms in the house. I'd probably say like the lounge or dining room if you've got one of those, with a window open to help that ventilation, and wear a mask. One of these masks is ideal. It stops all the little dust particles getting in. It's got a dual filter, and it's got a one-way valve as well. I'm sure you can find a mask from somewhere right now. I'm shooting this video in May, so that gives you an idea of what's going on in the world. But yeah, I would strongly recommend a mask, even if you're outside actually. It's a foreign body and it can be irritant. You don't want this dust going into your lungs at all. It's just not worth it for you know, for building a big model. It's not worth the risk to your health at all. Okay, I'm going to crack on then and file these pieces, and join me in the next part when I will have filed the foot and the toes and the sort of shins, and I'll be ready to start gluing. I don't know whether that will be the next full part of this series of videos, but it'll definitely be the next video. Okay, so join me in the next part. Okay, something that is quite beneficial in this whole process is when you're dealing with some of the imperfections of the pieces, of which there will be a few. I've always found the liquid green stuff, or even the normal green stuff, which I can't find anywhere. Actually, I've looked for a good while, so I might have to buy some more. But you know which one I mean. You know, the two strips, the yellow and the blue. You rip a little piece off each, you mix them together, and they have a chemical reaction and they turn green, obviously because it's blue and yellow, and then you can sort of mould that into the nooks and crannies and gaps. Now there will be a few gaps in this model, it's just the nature of things, and because I can't find my green stuff, I'm going to have to put in an order for Games Workshop to sort of send me some if they can during this time. But if not, one of these things is I've got plenty of other things to be getting on with and completing the rest of the model before it kind of comes to that. But you know, in its place, the liquid green stuff is still quite fine. You know, this is great for, like, if I give you an example. So if you can just have a look at this. Right, so you see there's a little bubble there. That is unfortunate. You can risk it and spray the model and then paint over it and hope that the paint kind of clogs it up. But my experience, what I would suggest you do is dab a little bit of the green stuff on there just to fill the hole. Don't sand it straight away. Give it a day or two even, because the liquid green stuff is a bit more sort of delicate, fragile, and then once it's completely dry, then give it a bit of a sand over, and then that plugs the hole. And you often get it with these kind of smaller pieces. Look, there's another air bubble there where there's a lot of, look, there's another air bubble there where there's you know, a lot of detail and there's lots of different angles going on in the piece. You get these little air bubbles. It's one of these things that you get in resin models, but I just thought I'd give you my tip there for dealing with those, with the liquid green stuff. Applying the liquid green stuff, I wouldn't use a paintbrush. I'd use either one of these tools. This is more of my sort of prying tool in a way. This is quite useful, but Games Workshop do a plastic spatula thing specifically for texture. So this is for basing, but you can use it for the green stuff. Dab a little bit on, you know, taper it off, and then, you know, once it's completely dry, then you can just sand it, and you know, good as new. Okay, so once you have filed all of the parts and you put your green stuff on and you've let it dry and all the rest of it, you're now ready to engage in basically the favourite part of this modelling process for me, which is the building. I absolutely love building more than anything. So just create a little bit of space, move some things away. I wholeheartedly promote cleaning up your pieces. There's a bit of dust here. I'm going to go outside and brush all of this dust outside. If you're not able to do that, if you don't have a garden or balcony or anything like that, then please do wear a mask, and like I say, pick one of the largest rooms in the house near an open window, because you don't want to get this dust, not just the dust that you can see, but the dust you can't see, from entering your lungs. It's a foreign body. It's not going to do you any good in there. It shouldn't be in there. So I'm going to go outside and dust all of these off, and then we're going to start with the gluing, and I'll show you that piece. Okay, so we're now on to the gluing of this of the foot assembly. It's up to you. You can use the epoxy glue you know, this stuff, mix it up with the spatula and lather it onto these areas. I'm not going to do that with mine. I'm just going to use my super glue and affix these toes together. Now, from the instruction guide, it's very clear to see that the front of the foot, I'll just use this, is this curved part of it. I mean, yeah, they're both curved, but this kind of elongated curve part of it. So bear that in mind. You've then got the different toes that you can use. To me, all of these toes look exactly the same, whether they're front or side or wherever. And when you actually put them in, they all behave the same too. They are going to look a bit different, like some are a bit at an angle, but that is just because of this foot base. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to glue all of these together. You don't have to glue these pieces in. You can leave them till the very last and paint them. I'm going to take that risk though. I am going to glue these pieces on. I think I can get the paintbrush in there and do a good job, especially with spraying as well. So I'm going to do that, but for the rest of the armour plates, for everything else, I am going to leave them separate. I'm confident that I can still go about my sub-assembly business of this model without too much of an impact to the detail. So the one thing you've got to be careful of is that there are 2 front toes and then 6, say, normal toes. So you have to have a little look and see which ones are the front toes. I would say that the 2 front toes are the ones that are the same size. So that would be these 2. These are the longest toes. The other 6 toes, they're not specifically numbered or marked or anything like that. Whereas these 2, they are separate entries in the component list. So they are exactly the same and they are longer, and it specifically mentions them being the front toe. So that's how you know these are the front ones and not the rear ones. All of the other 6 are for the side and the rear. Unlike the Reaver Titan, where each toe was specific to shin armour set and the joints themselves, the Warlord Titan, all of those toes are the same. So it's interesting to see that this Titan, the majority are the same, with the exception of these 2 longer front toes. As we've singled out these front toes, we're going to place them straight away as such, so that they don't get mixed up anywhere. And we're going to glue them on first. Now, like I say, you can put some epoxy resin in there and really glue it down. But when gluing the front toes, I would suggest putting a fair bit of glue in there and in the other and in the rear toe, and then gluing them both together like that, and then doing the same for the 2 side toes as well, so that you've got an equal kind of weight distribution, gluing point thing, I want to call it, at the same time, and you're not just gluing one side, which could have a bit of movement, even though they are level, and the toe itself is level with the base of the foot itself. So get my fresh glue, put a fair amount. Oh, it's brand new, so it's going to take a while to come out, but when it does, just now you can be quite sparing in it, so you can put a fair amount on if you wish. So there you go, that's one part, and then while that one's sort of going its way, we can then do this one at the same time. The only bad thing about this glue is it's absolute pain to get it out. It really is tough work. Lovely. And there we go. So that will just slot in there like that. You don't need any grips or anything.
and then we'll concentrate on the next one, and join me when all of these toes and the little armour plates and things will be complete on this foot assembly.
Okay, so the next stage after you've completely glued the foot assemblies, remember, you know, as you're moving things about and stuff, the orientation might get a bit misplaced. Like I just picked it up there and thinking that that was the front. This is the front where it has more of a rim, I want to call it. This is the front toe. It's the one that has this curved bit here. Now I've completely glued this. You know, you don't need to glue the armor plates in. That's optional at the moment. Although what I will say is that they can't clip on there like the Warlord Titans sort of armor plates. So unless you want to paint them right now, you are going to be waiting quite a while, you know, to eventually affix them. I've just affixed them because they're not vastly detailed armor plates, and I reckon I could get a paintbrush on there to paint them black and then to paint the gold trim around. It won't really be an issue for me. So anyway, both of those feet are kind of done in terms of the toes. Now the next stage is a bit tricky. It includes these two shins, or lower legs. It's a bit counterintuitive because I kind of want to put it in like that, but no, you've got to make sure that this curvature is facing forwards. So they just slot in like so, and this is a tricky bit because I've looked at this and I've kind of dry assembled it, and these parts are all ready to go, and I found out that when I put all of these parts on there, it's going to completely cover up all of the detail in there, which I want to, you know, paint that gold and black still. I think that's probably the best option for it, or at least brass. So I'm not going to be able to do that if I glue all of these supports on. So I'm taking a bit of a risk in terms of support, because I now realise that when I build these legs, they're only going to be supported at present by this. That's it. And until I've then painted these separately and then sort of super glued them in to give them an extra 4 points of support, you know, per leg, which does suck in a way, but it's one of those where, you know, you can suck it up and you can glue these and then spray it and then not be able to, you know, you're going to be able to see the detail in there that's not painted. It just, for me, I want to spend quality time on this, and that was just too much of a reduction in quality and detail that I was not prepared to do. So I'm going to leave these off, but I am going to glue these sort of shins in, and I'll show you how to do that. They fit in quite snugly. They're a bit loose, but yeah, they both have nice tolerances in a way, but look, as you can see, if you just leave it, it will go out unless you sort of balance it in the middle. So what I would suggest gluing these is, you can pin it, you can put a pin through there, and then you can drill a hole, put a pin in the bottom, and then, you know, marry it up and glue it. I'm not going to do that. I am going to score it. What I mean by that is draw lots of like hash marks and hash marks here, all across there, and then I'm actually going to use my epoxy resin glue for this bit. I don't want these feet moving at all, or the shin moving at all, so I'm going to be mixing these up and dolloping some. And in terms of position, you could have it like so. I've test fitted it with these armor plates that go on a little bit like so. I've kind of test fitted it with this and this toe section, this toe support. Just got to get the right ones. There we go. So, but basically, for the purposes of this demonstration, if I sort of fit it like so, it's so tricky. But you know, you've got some movement there. You know, you've got some movement there. You can have it at a fair distance of angle. Look, you know, that works all the way at that angle if you wanted it, or quite upright. Mine's going to be quite upright, so probably about there or so.
So if I just sort of look at that angle, it's going to be about right. And plus you get to you know, amend this a bit later on when you put the knees in themselves, which I believe go in, you know, like that. And these are an odd one, these pieces, because it fits in quite snugly there, but if you were to leave it like that and put the knee armour in, which is opposite them the way you think it would be, that is already at quite an angle, and I want mine to be, I mean, if we then put the knee piece in, if we put the thigh piece in, this one, I guess, that's already going to be at quite a low angle, if you can see that. So I want mine a bit more upright, so it's really odd, but you have to sort of move this up and then put that in, and then it glues in, but it never kind of, what I'm trying to say is this back bit never sort of glues or slots on there. It's really quite odd. However, I believe that this piece and this piece do connect at some point. So yeah, odd knee joint that. It kind of puts the weight on the front rather than the back. It's going to be interesting how that supports the whole model, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So yeah, you'll see the next part of this video where I will have glued these, and I'll be ready to be gluing the rest of the leg pieces on and getting those hips level. One thing I will say is before you glue these hips and top of the legs to the lower leg, I think it's best to put some milliput or green stuff or liquid green stuff even in there, because with the tolerances that looks, you know, quite unsightly, having a gap there when the piston is supposed to be inside there. And I'm a bit, I say annoyed with ForgeWorld in a way, because like it's even worse there, look, that they've allowed this to happen, these tolerances. This piston is fine, but these two are just terrible, and they should have drilled further holes or allowed these pistons to go into the piece itself. That would have negated any kind of tolerance issues there. So that's going to need a bit of a repair. The other one is not, yeah, similar. Not so bad on the front, but definitely as bad on the rear. So join me in the next part.